Once again, I find myself needing to do the things. I need to stretch. I need to process physically what I have been emotionally digesting for the last few weeks. I've been feeling my feelings. That's a good thing to do. And as can happen in grief, my body has been a little sluggish. That's okay. That's acceptable. That's what grief does. I am not masking. I am feeling both sides of that grief joy spectrum. That's important because masking, I don't mask. Not anymore. Not for anybody. I prefer to be free, and me happens to be many because I have DID. Used to be multiple personalities, but then the media went and villainized people like we. Anyway, just fun little rhymes. I need to stretch. Full disclosure, This is gonna go ahead and be another funny little weird one because I'm gonna turn on some tasting history with Max Miller. Fantastic channel. Today we're watching the history of pozole. I think I said that correctly. I hope I did. Here we go.
In Mexico and here in Southern California, Christmas and the holiday season means it's time to make pozole, a beloved stew of hominy and meat like pork, chicken, beef, or during the Aztec Empire, human flesh. So thank you to Babbel for sponsoring this video as we make pozole, this time on Tasting History.
Just get right in there, Max Miller, okay.
So I like to do historic recipes on this channel, and I wanted to find an old recipe for pozole. But it turns out that because this recipe has mostly been passed down orally through the years, finding an old recipe in all of my old cookbooks proved fruitless. Don't put fruit in your pozole. But there are many, many kinds of
flesh,
pozole.
yes.
The three
Fruit,
most
no.
common represent the colors of the Mexican flag. Red and green pozole use different colored chilies and ingredients to achieve their color, while white pozole often forgoes chili as an ingredient altogether. And they use all different kinds of meat, too. Most use either pork or chicken or beef, but some use turkey or sardines and shrimp.
Like that.
Now, I did find one historic description that lays out what this dish would have been like in pre-conquest Aztec Mexico, but after reading it, I was hesitant to make it at home. First, they cooked the maize, which was going to be served with the human flesh, and they put a little of the meat on the maize. They mixed no chili either with the cooked stuff or with the meat, only salt. This meat was eaten by him who made the banquet and his relations. Well, I wasn't going to cook that. No chilies, no salt? That sounds bland. So at a loss for an historic recipe, I turned to my mother-in-law, who has a recipe for pozole passed down through the generations, straight from her grandmother to her. Now, my mother-in-law is from Mexico, so I heard this recipe in Spanish, and while I did need help with the translation, I was pretty impressed with myself at how well I kept up and how far my Spanish has come along since I started learning it about a year ago with our sponsor, Babbel. Babbel is the language app that I've been using to learn Spanish over the past year.
Yes, we
And
are
I
not
love
being
it because
sponsored by
all
Babbel,
the
so
lessons
we're gonna go
are
ahead.
put together by actual language teachers, Las Pozole. So for this recipe, what you'll need is 10 cups or about 3 kilograms
support
of
Max
hominy.
Miller.
They come in these huge cans.
Code is
so
probably Tasting
one
History.
huge can. Also, make sure to rinse your hominy after it comes out of the can. 2 to 3 pounds or about 1 kilogram of pork shoulder or leg cut into 1-inch pieces. Then you want something with bones that's really going to add flavor, like pork neck or even trotters. That's their little feet. 2 tablespoons of salt, a bulb of garlic divided in 2, 1 onion cut in half, 15 to 20 guajillo chilies. You can also add other chilies, especially if you want it hotter. 2 teaspoons cumin, 1 tablespoon dried Mexican oregano, and then either a cup or 235 milliliters of chicken stock, or if you really want a better flavor, 2 to 3 tablespoons of Knorr chicken bouillon seasoning. It's easier, it's actually better than using chicken stock, and it's been around for over 100 years. Now before you make this, it is imperative that you are in a good mood, because they say that whatever mood you are in while you're making it goes into the pozole.
Amen.
And that will transfer to whoever is eating it. So make sure to smile and then soak your chilies for 1 to 2 hours.
Energy's real,
If they won't
folks.
stay submerged, set something heavy on them to keep them down. While they soak, get about 6 to 8 quarts of water boiling, and then add in the salt, half of the garlic, and both halves of the onion. Now you don't want to chop these up or press the garlic because you want to get all of the flavor, but you don't want little pieces of this in your final product. So just leave them whole. It's real easy. Then carefully add the pork and bring it back to a boil for 1 hour. And you can't just leave it for an hour. It's very high maintenance. It starts to get this like greasy scum on top, and you have to skim that off. And you have to check on it every 10 minutes or so because the scum will come back. Now when the hour starts to close in, take the chilies out of the water and let them drain. Do not squeeze the chilies trying to get the water out because they will burst and squeeze spicy chili juice in your eye. Rookie mistake. I'd never do that. But once the chilies are drained, take off the stem and remove all of the seeds. Then take the chilies and put them into a blender along with the rest of the garlic and a bit of the water that they soaked in, about a cup. Then blend until smooth. Then pass the blended chilies through a sieve so that you have a nice, smooth sauce. Then when the pork is boiled for about an hour, pour the sauce into the pot along with the oregano, the chicken bouillon, and the cumin. Then stir everything together and let it boil for about 30 minutes or until the meat is nice and tender. It really should be able to just fall apart. At that point, give it a taste, and if you need to add a little bit more salt or seasonings, go ahead and do so. You can also add a little bit more water if the level has gone down too much, but then add the hominy and stir it all together. Now, hominy is a specific kind of corn that has already gone through the laborious and amazing process of nixtamalization.
there it is.
So it's actually already been cooked once, so it only needs about another 30 minutes to fully cook. Also, if you want to see me go through this laborious process of nixtamalization, I will put a link to the video that I did last year on tamales, and I'll put it at the end of this video as well. It is quite the process, but it was fun to do once. Now, with 30 minutes to go, that should be plenty of time to
Right.
make sure that you are subscribed to Tasting History
My
as we look at a
spine
rather dark
just needs
chapter
a little bit of extra
food
love right
history.
now. So I'm making sure
Now,
to
before we delve into
elongate
this
as I
history,
stretch.
a light warning. It is a little graphic. Not super, but a little graphic. So if you don't feel comfortable hearing about human sacrifice and cannibalism, this is where you get off the bus. But if you are still here, let's do it. So pozole, which comes from the Nahuatl word potzoli, referred to the foam that was created when cooking hominy, or it may have referred to the foamy look that hominy actually has. And it was eaten as a staple of the diet, probably mixed with herbs and chilies and maybe some meat. But the form of the dish that gets recorded in the histories of the Aztecs was eaten only on ceremonial occasions that included the sacrifice of blood. Now, this sacrifice was often rather small. It usually came in the form of the Aztecs themselves piercing their ears or their tongue and letting a few drops of blood out, which granted, in a time before antibiotics, was rather dangerous. These minor bloodlettings were often to give strength to the sun god Huitzilopochtli. It was imperative to keep the sun doing what it does, going up and down each day, and giving over a little blood was the way to make that go. Now, Huitzilopochtli had an interesting origin story because when his mother was pregnant with him, his other siblings decided that they wanted to kill her. But before they could, he came out of her womb fully armored with weapons and ran most of them off and killed his sister, cutting off her head and rolling her down a mountain. Rather fitting that he was also a god of war. Now, with this rather violent childhood and the fact that he needed a constant supply of human blood to keep the sun going up and down, which was how he staved off the end of the world, it makes sense that during his festival, they would try to reenact the killing of his sister with a little human sacrifice. And really, there were two ways in which this was done. First was to reenact his birthday battle with warriors that had been captured in actual battle. They slew the captives by battling with them, these being tied by the waist with a rope which passed through the socket of a round stone as of a mill. And 4 warriors came against him with swords and shields, and one by one they exchanged sword blows with him until they vanquished him. Seems a little unsportsmanlike, but I suppose a fair fight really isn't the point. Now, the other way that the myth was reenacted was done on a much larger scale. Archaeologists point to thousands of people being sacrificed in a very short period of time just during one festival. They were mostly captives of war and slaves that would be taken to the top of a great pyramid in the capital of the empire, Tenochtitlan. The pyramid was meant to represent the mountain where Huitzilopochtli was born. The captives would be held down on a sacrificial stone by 5 priests, and then came the priest who was to kill him. And he struck him with a flint knife held in both hands between the breasts, and into the gash which he made he thrust his hand and tore from the victim his heart. And then he offered it to the sun and cast it into a gourd vessel. They started the body rolling down the pyramid steps. It came to rest upon a small square below. There some old men carried it to their tribal temple, where they dismembered it and divided it up in order to eat it. So there was a bit of a leap there from human sacrifice to eating said sacrifice. Now the Dominican friar Diego Duran, in a surprisingly even-handed description, says that it was done as a sort of communion with the god, as they ate what the god would eat. And it was done with reverence, ritual, and fastidiousness, as if it was something from heaven. And one reason this might be is actually because of another Aztec god, Tzipetotec, which means our Lord the Flayed One. Supposedly, he fed early humans by flaying himself and then letting them eat his flesh, which is actually a common trope in many religions. And here it likely represented the way that corn and other seeds shed their outer skin before becoming edible.
Yeah,
a symbolism
so
probably
good.
lost on those captives who had to participate in the reenactment, which Bernardino de Sahagún described. They were killed by the priests of the temple. They flayed them all. The body was cut up and a thigh sent to Moctezuma for him to eat, the rest being distributed to other chieftains or relatives who went to eat it in the house of the man who had captured the victim. They cooked that meat with corn and gave each one a piece of it with its broth in a bowl with the cooked corn. They called that stew tlacatlaoli. After the meal followed general drunkenness. That tlacatlaoli, which literally means husked corn of men, was pozole with human meat. And it was not something that was eaten often or by the majority of the population. It was only eaten as part of these religious ceremonies, and even then in small quantities and only by the priests and the ruling class. But these stories from eyewitnesses were then manipulated into stories of mass cannibalism that were used as justification back in Spain for the conquest of New Spain and the Caribbean, most of the civilizations of which didn't practice cannibalism at all. It was very much trying to paint everyone with the same brush. But with the conquest came the abolition of this type of pozole, but the dish lived on, mostly with a new ingredient that had been brought over from Europe, pig, or pork. Just like in the pozole that should be ready to take off the stove. So once the hominy is cooked for 30 minutes, it is ready to eat, but don't eat it all because the flavors really develop in the second and third day. So keep it in the fridge and give it a couple days and then try it again. It's going to be even better. But whether you eat it in a few days or now, you can't forget the toppings. Really, pozole is just a canvas on which toppings go. More common additions are radish, onion, cabbage, avocado, a squeeze of lime, a little oregano, and of course, tortilla chips. And here we are, a more modern version of the Aztec classic pozole.
Feels
So I have my
much
chip, but I'm going to
better.
use a spoon so I can try to get as many of the ingredients as possible. Definitely want to get the meat and the hominy though. Let's go. It's like a hug. You can definitely add more chilies to it, either before cooking it or as a topping. I love the flavor of the
It's like a
chilies,
hug.
which you get
Yes,
in
yes.
spades, but you don't get too much of the spice. That's really up to you. What I really love is not only the combination of all the flavors, but the textures. The meat is so soft it just falls apart. The hominy has this like give. You kind of got to bite into it, but then it just softens once you do. And you've got the crunch of the chips and the radish and the cabbage along with the zest of the lime. It's really like just all the flavors and all the textures that there are combined in one bowl. And it's perfect for, it's perfect for any time, for any celebration. That's usually when it's made. But it's really nice for a little bit of cold weather. So like I said, there are so many versions
Sweetie.
of this dish
I
that
love
you can
that.
really do almost anything you want to it to make it your own. What you don't want to do is do what John Steinbeck, the author, would do when he wanted to make pozole. See, he loved the dish, but if he couldn't find it and had to make it himself, he said that he would just follow his friend Jack Wagner's recipe, which called for a can of chili and a can of hominy. Don't do that. Do sign up for Babbel at the link down in the description, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And if you haven't seen it already, here's that video to tamales, another wonderful Christmas Mexican recipe. And I will see you next time on Tasting History. And I'm going to finish some of this pozole, but I'm saving most of it for a couple days from now.
Alright, thank you very much, Max Miller. Obviously got lots of processing in. That's lovely. Lots of yawning. Yawning is a great indicator that things are moving through. Yawning, involuntary swallowing, those involuntary sighs, the ones that just happen, you know. I just swallowed there. Burps. Passing gas. There's a few more. I'm just not calling them right now. Those are all wonderful indicators that your nervous system is responding well to the regulation, that you're feeling at a very deep and intimate level, you're feeling safe. And I wish to go show myself a little bit more love, but I can't do that one on here. So, if you know, you know. And if not, thanks for joining. I will catch you next time, I hope. Thanks for being here.